older now because of what they've been through and how it's impacted them and how that trauma's making them a difficult person to deal with. All right? We gotta start reversing the culture and the programming. So your emotions, including your anger, your sorrow, your fear, are both natural and necessary, and you have God's permission to feel them. Can we say amen tonight? All right. Anybody want to talk about this one? Anybody got anything they want to share? I'm sorry that I put it down too soon. Okay. That's okay. That's okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. 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 And that's fine. I want y'all to understand what I'm not saying tonight. What I'm not saying tonight is you have to, and let me kind of get into this next one, and I think it'll be a little bit more clear what I'm talking about, and what I'm not saying. So I think that's fine, and I think we all have to kind of do what we need to do to survive and to sustain. So the free it one then becomes very important, right? And there's various ways to do that, but for just a few minutes, I want to focus on the fact that I think we overlook quite a bit, and that's the fact that our ultimate outlet is God Himself. And I don't think we've been taught to take advantage of that the way we should. Most of us learned to pray very sort of formally, right? Especially if you grew up in the church, decades ago, and sort of went through, especially as men, we kind of go through, worship leadership training and stuff like that, and we learn to pray by modeling our prayers after other people's prayers, and the certain checking all the boxes of things to say and the different phrases to use and all that. But one thing I think that does, unfortunately, is it keeps us from really learning to talk to God the way that we should and the way that we can. And I wonder if a lot of us even realize we can talk to God the way we can. Jeremiah is sort of my example for this. So one of the greatest and most overlooked manifestations of His grace to us, right, is the fact that God Himself lets His people pour it all out to Him. He's not just looking for the good and the happy and the nice phrases and the things that we think we're supposed to say. He wants it all, and He can take it all. When you have some time, look at Jeremiah chapter 20. But I love this prayer that Jeremiah prays because he cries out, he complains to God, he even accuses God for the trouble that he's experiencing. He starts out by saying, God, you deceived me, right? He says, God, you deceived me. Now, there's some variable translations to that. One is you persuaded me. but I think the connotation is still very much the same, right? It's almost like you overpowered me. You overruled me, God. You knew I didn't want to go to these people, right? You knew I didn't want this job. I didn't call myself to be a prophet, and if I had my choice, I wouldn't be here fooling with these people and taking what I'm taking from them. And so Jeremiah says, Lord, you deceived me. You pushed me into something that I didn't want to do. And he's very angry, he's very bitter, and he practically unloads on God. And God doesn't smite him. God doesn't rain fire on him. The ground doesn't open up and swallow Jeremiah. And I really truly believe that as God's faithful people, he can take whatever we need to give him in order to free some of this pent-up emotion, to release the pressure. I think he'd much rather us bring it to him than take it to somebody else and move in a sinful way in our anger. And one thing I love about Jeremiah's prayer, if you go there and read it, it turns very quickly, right? He kind of releases and vents, and then very quickly, it's almost like he breathes a sigh of relief and he comes back to himself and he starts talking some sense again, quote unquote. Then toward the end of it, he even kind of goes back into the sort of the bitter complaining mode just a little bit. But I think what Jeremiah's prayer shows us is the process of releasing and then receiving back from God. Having enough faith and trust in him as a God who's big enough to handle all of this. A God who can take my little anger, a God who can take my little rage. He's probably grinning while I'm venting and raging against my circumstance. God, why did you let this happen? Why me? You can take all that to him. And we're not taught that we can, right? We don't talk about that. We don't pray like that. It's not publicly, definitely not publicly. And a lot of us don't even do it privately because we feel like that's wrong, or we shouldn't talk to God that way, or it's disrespectful, or I can only come to him, in a certain way, very formally and reverently, and I have to keep it in this little box. No, you don't. You don't. All right? So learning to free that emotion. So first and foremost with God, and then also finding other outlets, other ways to release that pressure. It might be a good friend who gets it. And every now and then you just need to call them up and say, listen, I need to scream at you for a few minutes. I need to come over and just cry for a while. I need to come over and just be mad. I need to vent for a little while. And that friend gets it, and they know just to listen and let you unload. And when you're done, you hug and you go back to work, or you go back home, or whatever it is, and it's all good, right? They even got rage rooms now. Y'all heard of those? Where you just go in and break stuff. Maybe we need to put one in here at the building. Just a room to go in, and it's padded, and there's plywood on the walls and sledgehammers, and you put on a helmet and some goggles and just go in there and smash stuff.
Batting cages work real well.
Batting cage, right? Go to the batting cage and swing yourself to sleep, right? Even if you don't hit, I went one day and didn't hit nothing, and I was so tired and sore, but I just, man, so finding some way to free the emotion, right, in a non-destructive and non-sinful way. And again, I just want to reiterate it. Our first stop should be God. Your first stop should be him. Let it out. If you haven't had this conversation with him yet, have it. Right? Lord, I don't get it. I'm angry with you for letting it happen. I was a kid. You didn't send anybody to protect me. And I was mad, and I'm still mad. Right? Have it out with God. Have it out with God and see what happens. Go to him in prayer, spirit-led prayer, in faith. Again, you're not turning your back on God. You're not, but he can take it. And you might need to get it off in that way. Yeah.
I just want to touch on a couple of things here. First off, going off of what you were saying about not being able to cry most of the time as a coping mechanism, even though you're not crying on the outside, you're crying on the inside. So to keep that on the inside is more destructive sometimes than to let it out in private or with somebody, or even like you said, with God, somebody who has a traumatic background, very traumatic. I understand what you're saying though, and it's almost like you feel like you're letting yourself down if you let it out.
No, it's not that. It's that I will never stop crying.
But you are crying on the inside.
I literally
Yeah.
will lose absolute control
Yeah, I've been there too.
because that is everything. But the other side is God prepared me for it. I didn't know he was preparing me, but when I look back, I know God was preparing me, and God stepped in. It has filled my husband's shoes, basically, since then. So I don't have that. Like, I don't know what anybody does when they lose their partner if they don't have God, because God has just filled, like, I still miss my husband, but I spend all day talking to God that I would have spent that time talking to my husband. Like, when stuff is going on, I just am talking to God. Like, I just have these conversations with God now instead of with my husband, so God hears about the business and,
Right.
you know, and I'm thanking him for things that I used to thank my husband for, and, you know, so I don't have that kind of grief. But I just miss him, and so I don't let myself think about how much I miss him. Because if I did, I would just fall apart and never pull myself back together again.
The other thing is that when you say free it, you go to God, you free it, or you go to that partner that you trust, friend, whoever it is, and you free it. It doesn't mean it doesn't pop back up.
Right.
again.
Exactly.
Because things happen all the time, and they call it fight or flight, which I suffer from. I'm either gonna stand up and fight for what I believe in, or if I don't have to deal with you, I'm gonna walk out and just leave and not deal with the situation, leave it there. But unfortunately, what happens in the fight mode is usually the person that is closest to you gets it.
Yeah.
So, sorry, my husband gets it a lot. You know, I because I have that fight or flight mode. Like, I know you didn't just talk to me like that. Like, you know, because a man hurt me in my past when I was a child, now it's like, you ain't, nope. You know, so I get that little fight or flight thing going.
Right.
And, so we have to be careful when we say free it, because you can free it for the moment, but like I was telling you, Rigel, it's like death. You can get through it day by day, but you never get past it.
Right. And it's just like a pipe. The pressure builds up, you release some of the pressure, but eventually it's going to build up again, right? So this journey of learning how to do it productively, spiritually, in positive ways, healing, and then getting to this last one of focusing it really kind of brings everything full circle. So, and we've already talked about this, but praying for God to lead you to the constructive calling he wants to bring about through the destructive and traumatic things you've been through. Okay, so now really seeking God as we go through this process of feeling it and freeing it in different ways. Okay, now God, it's still there, right? The wound is still there, and the pressure's going to build back up, but now I need you to start teaching me where you want me to direct this energy, right? I've got this emotional energy. It ain't going anywhere, probably for the rest of my life. And so you, Lord, redeem this experience by showing me what my ministry is now. showing me, where you want me to put this energy. So 3 questions to kind of ask yourself. How can God's grace be magnified through my difficult experiences? All right. So how does God get glory through this? What are some ways and areas that I can see, even in my struggle, my abuse, my whatever, God was still working, even in it and in the aftermath, and so how can I put the spotlight on His grace? Who can I help, mentor, or support as a result of what I've gone through? All right. So who does my trauma connect me to? Who does this now empower me to relate to in a way that I could not before I went through what I went through? And then thirdly, where can I pour out my emotional energy in a productive, God-honoring way? Maybe there's already a ministry up and running that I just need to jump on board and start working. Use this energy. Use this anger, right? Channel it in a positive way. Maybe there's an organization. Maybe there's somebody in the community helping victims or preventing abuse or doing trainings. Where can I pour out this energy in something positive and productive? So before we wrap up tonight, anybody want to share your experience with any of those 3 F's? The feeling it, the freeing it, the focusing it. Where are you? What's helped you sort of in your journey? And I'll put this last one up too. This one doesn't require a whole lot of description or, talking about, but the last piece of this is really to seek out and submit to skilled guidance on your healing journey. And I put Proverbs 24:6 up here because we are talking about spiritual warfare. We're talking about tearing down strongholds. We're talking about battling against the enemy. And so we need guidance to wage war. That's wisdom, right? I need guidance to wage war, and victory is won through many advisors. So God has put people around us, be it in our spiritual family, be it professional care. There's help, right? And you guys have heard me talk about this quite a bit. There is no shame in seeking help. There is no shame in going to see somebody who can help you process what you've been through, who can help you unpack years of baggage, who can help you get to the root of some of your trauma responses and why you do what you do in a way that's impacting your relationship now or hurting your job performance now or whatever. There's no shame in that. And there's I want to say especially that there's no church shame. That's right? Yeah. A lot of times in church we haven't done a good job and we've shamed people for seeking help and talking about it or seeing a counselor. Nothing wrong with that. I'd encourage you to talk to one who's got a spiritual and Christian background, but there's no shame. We shame people, and we have for a long time. I think we're doing a lot better now. We're doing a lot better than we used to in the church. But where's your faith? You don't need to see a psychologist. God can handle that. What you ought to have a stronger relationship with God. You shouldn't still be going through that. And we shamed people out of getting the help that they needed to process and heal. That's all this is. Unpacking, talking things through, processing it, understanding it better, releasing it, venting it, right? So getting the insight of people who can help you.
One of the ways I used to deal with it, which was not very helpful at all, was to try to make the people around me feel as hurt as I was.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very, very destructive to relationships. But I think that some of us do have that tendency. If we're feeling bad, down on whatever, and hurting, then if somebody else is hurting too, then you don't have to feel so alone.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did learn to take it to God instead, and that made a big difference. But my sister used to say I could play flesh at 50 yards with my tongue. I was so hateful,
Mm.
and that is not a compliment.
Thanks for sharing. Anybody else got a couple minutes left? Just any experiences, thoughts, feelings?
One thing, just reading, I'm reading Tyrell's, C.S. Lewis, Narnia series, and the one where, Zeus gets turned into a dragon because he's reading for whatever reason, he's turned into a dragon, and then realizes what he's missing is the signature of the
Mm-hmm.
So Aslan is represents Jesus, comes to him and tells him to take him, come out of his skin. So it's, representing all of the trauma and all that stuff that he's dealing with. And he peels off the layer, but it grows back again.
Mm-hmm.
And they try to peel it off again, and it keeps coming back. And Aslan says, I'm the only one who can do this for you. And so when we're healing, we have to remember we can't do it on our own, fighting it or talking to other people that don't know Jesus. It's not going to heal. It isn't. It's not going to go away at all. And it's just always going to come back. But one of the biggest things that I learned through my healing process years ago was that just talking to God about it and spilling it all out in journals like crazy, He put people around me, Christian people around me that mentored me and taught me and gave me healing books and scriptures and whatever. And it took a while, I'm not proud, but significant hurdles I went through because of who God put in my life, who God put. And biggest breakthrough that I had in the healing process was finding out that I was grafted into His body. So that scripture about being grafted in, He made me His child. So I don't have a dad, that's special, but He is my dad, and I'm His child. And because I'm in Him, I can do everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so the concept of the great one, of just attached to Him, and He's mine, was, for me, that was a huge breakthrough. And knowing that because people throughout the group will tell their stories and, help each other. So just, there's a lot, just being able to give ourselves, holding our hands up and giving it to God, what would that feel like? And then receiving that love and knowing that we're worthy to receive it.
Amen. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate that. Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Good stuff. I love a good Narnia, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Marvel reference. Good stuff. Gold star. Anybody that can
Two
work in
things.
some.
If a person does come to you and wants to talk about it, you need to be, number one, a good listener.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, make sure that it's confidential.
Yeah.
That has to be if you're going to listen to somebody.
Yeah.
You have to realize that. And the other thing is that as parents and grandparents, when our children want to talk about something, that's we're their protector.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to listen and encourage and let them get it out rather than let them suppress it.
Amen. Amen. So we'll close out there tonight. Next week we're going to very slightly segue into room 3. It's very much connected to this because I told you I wanted to dig a little bit more into what forgiveness is and what it isn't and why a lot of us struggle with that. So that's going to be next week's lesson. And so we'll pick that up. Any prayer requests? Yep.
My friend Gene that we've been praying for did pass away this last
Okay.
Saturday. His funeral is this coming Saturday. Just keep his family in prayer. They did FaceTime or whatever that is his